Hi, welcome. My name is Nancy Bocci. With me today is Lieutenant Jim Keenan from the Somerville Fire Department. We're going to briefly talk about some winter safety tips to help keep everyone in our community safe and healthy this winter. Thank you for coming on, Jim.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So one thing that I wanted to start chatting with was space heaters. People use them as the weather's getting colder, and tell us how to use them safely.
Okay, well, the first thing I would like to say about space heaters is if you have one that is not electric, it is illegal. They used to have these kerosene space heaters. They are totally legal. They're extremely deadly. So if you have one, or if you know someone that has one, get rid of it.
Okay, good point.
Now, if you do have an electric space heater, you want to make sure that it's got that certificate with it. They're usually on the power cord or somewhere on the unit itself, that it's been tested by like Underwriters Laboratory or Factory Mutual. You want to make sure, get some of these products from overseas and they're not up to standard. So you want to make sure that they've got that laboratory testing. You want to check the cord, make sure it's not frayed or broken anywhere, if you've had it for a couple of years or something. And they need to be 3 feet away from anything that can burn, from furniture or drapes, or your person, like somebody might have it next to their bed. So you want it 3 feet away from anything that's combustible. And always make sure you shut it off when you go out and shut it off and unplug it when you're not using it, especially when you go out of doors.
You had mentioned briefly about checking the cord on the heater. Let's talk a little bit about extension cords and not overloading them, as we've all seen happen.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because you shouldn't even use those, anything that draws a lot of power, even though we're talking about winter safety, but we talked about it recently, the air conditioners, they really shouldn't be on an extension, and neither should the space heaters. If you do, you got to use one of those heavy-duty rated ones, but I would suggest not even using an extension cord.
Directly into the wall.
Yeah, directly into the wall. But if you needed to get it that 3 feet from the drapes or something, make sure it's one of those heavy-duty ones. And we were talking about lighting on Christmas trees and decorations. You don't want to overload those either. Usually the manufacturers of these lights say you don't want to put more than 3 strings together. Now they're coming out with these newer ones, the halogen ones. I mean, they're a little more expensive, but they don't generate the heat. And I think they save money in the long run because they use a lot less electricity. And I'm not sure how many of those strings you can put together, but I know all the older ones, they say 3 strings. And you don't want to, have 10 things plugged into the same socket. Like you see those old, plug extenders where there's it looks like a T or something, and there's like 6 of them.
Off, yeah.
So, we talk about power strips. Now those, if you get the kind with the built-in circuit breaker, that's something you might want to look at, because if it does get overloaded, it's going to trip the circuit. And always shut those lights off when you go out of the house.
But you drive around and see so many homes so nicely decorated, and people put all of this energy into it. And it should be properly displayed when you're home, but definitely when you're leaving, make certain to unplug and shut all of that off to keep your home safe.
Yes, at my own home, what I do is I have them on a timer in case, like you said, if I get caught late somewhere, and you don't want to burn it all night long.
Right.
So I put mine outdoor ones on a timer, but the indoor ones you never leave on when you go out the door.
Good point. We also need to talk a little bit about Christmas trees. The weather's coming. Typically we see a lot of people around here after Thanksgiving either starting to put up the artificial one or going out to purchase the live one. So let's talk live one first in terms of safety.
The first thing you want to do when you select it is make sure that they cut about 4 inches off the bottom, because what happens is when they cut them down in the forest, the sap turns hard. It's a defense mechanism of the tree. So what you want to do is you have and they usually do it, but if they don't, just tell them cut a couple inches off the bottom. So then when you bring it home, and you want to make sure you get a really sturdy, non-tip over type of tree holder, and you want to keep that full of water, because the tree will actually drink the water, and it'll keep it from getting too dry and too brittle. And you want to check that water every day. Just fill it up every day. Let the tree drink. So that's the main thing. You want to keep that away from any kind of heat, your radiator, or if you've got one of those heat exchanger, the blowers, and especially the space heater. So you want to keep that away from heat sources. Same thing, inspect your lights. You roll them up, you throw them in the attic or the cellar. Those wires could get cracked. So you want to just take a minute to make sure that they're not, and if they are, get rid of them, buy some new ones.
I go the artificial route. I don't like my house getting messy from the live tree. So the artificial tree, again, in terms of using lighting on that.
Yeah, well, the same thing with the space heaters. You want to make sure that it's got like a UL seal, that it's fire retardant, because it's, it could be made of plastic, but if they make it with this like fire retardant stuff, it's safer. Some people have metal trees, and those tend to heat up if you leave the lights on too long. So you just want to make sure that it's, it's again approved by a lab. you don't leave the lights on too long, and you have a sturdy stand.
You mentioned briefly the use of candles, how a long time ago they were used on trees, but with the holidays and people tend to have, fancier dinners, and there's a lot of use of candles now. How can we keep safe using those?
Well, of course, never leave a candle unattended. If you're going out of the room, blow it out. You can always light it back up when you come in. You want to make sure they have those sturdy holders. Most of the ones today come in those nice jars. Or if you have a candelabra, but that's fine. But you want to make sure it's sturdy, it's not wobbly. The candles fit in there properly. But the main thing is, and again, keep it a foot away from anything that can burn. So, like if you've got it on a counter, you want to make sure that the cabinet's not right above it. Anything that can burn, you want to keep it a foot away from. And again, the main thing is, if you're going out, even out of the room, blow it out. And turn it back on when you come back in.
When I spoke with Chief Sullivan about the idea of you coming on and providing some of these tips, he had asked that we spend a little bit of time talking about cooking safety, with the idea that in colder weather, a lot more people tend to stay indoors and are maybe doing larger meal preparation. And I know you had provided an example before of if you're cooking over an open flame and have like a hanging sleeve or something.
Yeah, that's one of the things, you say it's cold in the morning, you're going to get up and boil some water for tea or coffee or oatmeal, and you've got that cuff on your bathrobe that hangs down, put an elastic around it, or buy a new one, with the tighter cuff, but that you do not want that hanging down. We also tell people when you're cooking, use the mitts, keep a lid, the frying pan or the pot lid on the counter next to you, because if you get a fire in that pan, the quickest way to put it out is to get that lid on it, and I'm telling you, it's going to go out in seconds, because fire cannot exist without oxygen. So if you've got the right lid that fits tight, it'll put that out, and obviously turn off the knob too.
We had touched briefly before, but always worth mentioning the dangers of carbon monoxide, particularly with the potential snow ever coming our way.
Yep, like I said, these newer units or people that can convert to these direct vent units, they come right out through the foundation or just above the sill, so they're only maybe a foot or two above the ground. And if we have that snowfall like last year, they're going to be covered. Or even if we don't have a lot of snow, but you shovel out your driveway, say, or your walkway, you may inadvertently bury it. So you want to make sure that that's got no snow around it. We told you that's how the carbon monoxide law came about, the detector law, because these things were getting covered and people were getting sick and dying. So you definitely want to make sure that those are free. The tailpipe, if it's snowing, you're going to warm up your car, which really isn't a great idea. I know people, a lot of people have those starter things, but you got to make sure that tailpipe is clear. You want to crack those windows a little bit, and never leave your child or pet in the car while it's warming up, or idling anywhere for that matter.
Now, another topic that Chief Sullivan asked that we mentioned was the use of generators.
Yeah, a lot of, after last year, a lot of people lost power, and, the people pushed these manufacturers, and it is a way if we lose power, but same thing, they're for outside use. You got to make sure there's an exhaust on that too, so you got to make sure that's clear of anything, and you want to keep that 3 feet away from anything that can burn. Like you don't want it running in your garage, say.
Right.
A lot of people will build a little shed, but that's got to remain open. Have one side open so that it vents, and you want to check those wires too. This because they'll run, the power cords out to whatever appliance you're hooking it up to. I think we talked about if you have a major storm with power loss, people think like they could use, it gets cold if it lasts a long time. But you don't want to be using like a propane heater indoors or a charcoal. I read, not around here, but I read one time of an incident where someone lit their charcoal grill, an actual charcoal grill, and like 4 family members perished because that produces the carbon monoxide. And of course, we always want to stress, make sure you have those working smoke detector and carbon monoxide week, so we changed our batteries.
Right.
But your number one protection is working smoke and carbon monoxide detectors.
Right, very important point. We know sometimes from going through the neighborhood you can smell wood stoves burning, and there are some safety issues around that as well as pellet stoves.
Yes, well, like any heating device, like a regular oil burner or a gas burner, you need a building permit to install it. You need a licensed professional installer. That's another thing that it has to be 3 feet away from anything combustible. I know you see, I've seen a few of them in people's homes where they'll have like a masonry wall built around it, but it needs, because you need it to be 3 feet away. You need clearance. You've got to make sure that flue and chimney is clear, and they have to have a separate. They can't go into your like oil burner. They have to have their own chimney. You'll see a lot of those stainless steel ones.
Yeah.
And if it's a wood stove, you want to be burning hard seasoned wood, like pine has a lot of tar in it, and that stuff will build up. It turns to creosote, so that's why you got to have it's better to not burn that kind of stuff, like hard maple, oak, stuff like that. And you want it dry and seasoned, and you want that inspected once a year. And again, that's another one if you're going out. And like it's more the wood stoves are like in the living space, for the ambiance as much as the warmth. So you want to make sure when you're going out that you don't put any more wood in it or close the vents, because again that'll shut off the oxygen supply and it'll go out. Now the pellet stoves, those can heat a home. That's like your oil or gas burner. So that's usually down in the cellar. Again, you need it to be installed. You need a building permit. You need a licensed installer, and you need to keep it clean. Once a year, have it inspected, have it clean.
One thing when you mentioned ambiance kind of makes me think too, so there's fireplaces, which are very nice in the winter as well, but there are ways that we need to keep those safe and functioning as well.
Yep. Yeah. Again, I know it sounds like a broken record, but you want to make sure it's clean. The flue in the chimney, because like I said, that creosote can build up. And I've had a few incidents in my career here with chimney fires, because if you don't keep it clean, it can happen. One of the biggest things with fireplaces, even if the wood's not completely dry, there's a little water and they might spark out. So you want to have either that mesh cover, or a lot of them you'll see have the glass doors. But you want to make sure you have something. You don't want it to be open, because in case that thing blows out and it lands on your rug. So you want to make sure you have those glass doors or that mesh wire cover.
Excellent. The last thing we're going to touch on is ice and cold and storm safety.
We don't have any standing like ponds or lakes in Somerville. Obviously, we have some in the surrounding communities. But the one body of water we do have here is the Mystic River. And even though it may look like it's frozen over, running water never really freezes. So you don't want to ever go out on that Mystic River, no matter how frozen it looks. And if you do go like next door to Spy Pond or Wright's Pond, something to go skating, you want to make sure they usually have a sign if it's safe or not. And if somebody goes in, you don't want to go out after them. You want to call 911. Now, if you have a rope you can throw to them, that's fine. Or I've seen, like, we even teach our own equipment, ladders, but you don't, if one person goes in, you don't want to have, 5 people in there.
Right.
But the main thing is, again, stay off of the river, because it's not frozen. I don't care what it looks like, it's not. And if you're at somewhere else, that, make sure they've got that flag up. It's usually a flag or a sign that says skating is allowed or it's not allowed.
Very good. Was there any other just storm information that you wish to provide?
Well, we always tell you, make sure you have, plenty of batteries on hand for like flashlights, because we'd rather use a flashlight than a candle. And you want to be able to have a radio so that if there's any updates, weather updates, or something's going on. There's on the Massachusetts website, the mass.gov/DFS, they have a kit that you could have, clean water, canned goods, make sure you get plenty of blankets. You want to make sure those smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors are working. That's another reason to have your batteries. And all this information is available online. Or you can get in touch with us here at the fire department. You call the main city number, and you can dial extension 8100 for the main office or 8400 for fire prevention.
Excellent. Thank you for taking time out of your busy
pleasure.
schedule to come on and share this information. And I hope that people do follow up, because, it really seems very basic, but, it's so important to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of info out there. And like I said, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it.
Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate this, and
Well,
I'm sure our community will appreciate having this information. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. My pleasure.